Hey everybody, welcome to episode 97 of the Is That Normal podcast, and today we're going to be talking about a really great resource.
Yes. Today we're going to be reviewing Kara Powell and Brad Griffin's book, 3 Big Questions That Change Every Teenager. Fantastic resource. We've been using it for some things at our church, and so we're going to kind of walk through that. But before we do that, we want to talk about something else very special, which is our upcoming 100th podcast episode. Yeah. Very excited about that.
Yeah, that's amazing to think about. We started this thing, what's it been, a couple years ago now,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and really we're just looking for another tool to be able to communicate and just talk about some of the things that specifically parents and adults that are in the lives of adolescents and specifically teenagers, just get some great resources and information and have some just great conversations about that and put some resources out there for people. And so that's kind of how this all started. And so we've zigzagged our way along and to our current format, and it's been 100 episodes, or almost 100 episodes now, which seems incredible.
It is
incredible.
And we haven't ran out of things to say yet.
We have not. We've still got 100 more episodes worth of things to say, I think.
Right.
So, but yeah, so 100 episodes, that's worth celebrating.
It is, and we've covered a lot of things over those. As we look back over those 100 episodes coming up on that, lots of content, lots of great resources, lots of great conversations. I was just thinking this week about some of our guests we've had on, and inviting other people, because it takes a community of us to talk through some of these issues, and so it's just been really great. So what we're planning for that 100th episode is we're going to share 100 quick things that everybody needs to know about teens and young adults. So it's just going to be a real quick, shotgun kind of 100 list things that people need to know. And so we're excited about that. And we really want you as our listeners and viewers to be a part of that, not just consuming that, but contributing to that. So we've got several weeks before that episode. And so what we'd really like is if you have things that you've learned, things that that, you wish everybody knew about teenagers and young adult culture right now. If you have a great story about your experience with teenagers and young adults in your life that you would like to just feed into that list, we want to hear from you. And matter of fact, if we get somebody's got just a great idea, we may even ask you to be on the show. So anyway, we just want you to share with us what you've learned about teens and young adults in your journey of trying to raise kids for Christ.
So if you have great things to add to that list, just email us at connect@isthatnormal.org and help us celebrate. Well, welcome back to the Is That Normal podcast. And as Mark said, today we're going to be reviewing a book that's called 3 Big Questions That Change Every Teenager. And right now we're actually teaching some of this content to our high schoolers on Wednesday nights. And it's just really timely content for our parents to be able to get a picture of kind of what we're teaching, and it's just really, really relevant stuff. So tell us a little bit about why we're talking about this book specifically.
Yeah, so this is the newest in a series of books that Fuller Youth Institute, which is out of Fuller Seminary, has put out. And it's been based on deeply researching the culture and concerns surrounding teens and young adults in our society, which, if you are around anybody ever, people are talking about how different young people are and what are we going to do about young people. And Fuller has just decided, let's go figure this out. Let's go figure out what's unique about them. Let's figure out how they're engaging with things. And so they've just done some really great research, particularly not just youth culture at large, but youth culture among those who have grown up in the Western church. And so the research is based off of kids just like yours and mine that have grown up in a church in America, but they still have struggles. They still have questions. They still have unique things about them. And so they've dug into that, and we've reviewed some of their other content. A couple of the other books are Growing Young and Growing With, and we've used that content, just like we're using this content, to kind of guide and shape some of the things that we've talked about.
Yeah. So we know there are tons of other books and resources out there that deal, at least in this framework of this topic of teenagers. And so what's unique about this book?
Well, again, with Fuller, I feel like I read lots of books. We read lots of books. We review lots of books about youth culture and the church. And I just feel like they really have their finger on the pulse of what's going on right now better than anybody. Again, partly because of their research. And I feel like they're also coming up with actionable answers. And so in that, the Growing Young book, the first book, was aimed at church leaders. Let's talk about what kind of culture we can create at church that's going to foster good spiritual growth for young people. The second book, Growing With, was aimed at parents. Parents, here's some of the things that are going on with your children and your relationship with your children and your role that you need to have with your children to help them grow in their faith. This book is now a practical tool that they're saying, and this is what you can use to go have good conversations. And so this book is based around understanding the questions that kids are asking and then teaching us as adults how to engage kids in good, healthy conversation and point them to better answers. And so, and that's really the end of that whole discussion for them, is they want us to help them see how Jesus has better answers. So. Yeah.
So what are the three big questions?
Yeah. So the big questions are, first of all, who am I? Which is the question of identity. Where do I fit? Which is the question of belonging. And what difference can I make? Which is the question of purpose. And they take each of these questions. They talk about the cultural norms. How are people tending to answer those questions? And so they spend like a whole chapter with each of those questions. Like, this is the way people are answering it. And it's interesting because as you read it, and for me anyway, for some of them, I was like, oh yeah, that is how we answer it. Maybe that's a good idea. And then they say, but that's not the best answer. This is the best answer that Jesus gives. And they like turn this spin, and it's like this eye-opening, transformative thing, which is good for you as an adult reading it. But more so, they show you how to help the kids do that. But it's that hard process of, first we have to listen. First we have to understand. First we have to ask good questions. First we have to say, hey, it's good that you have found belonging here. But is that a permanent belonging? Wouldn't it be better if there was a way for you to permanently belong? Well, let's look and see what Jesus has to say about that. Yeah. And so it's affirming them along the path rather than just saying, I'm old, you're young, you're wrong, I'm right. And and so it gives you a good pathway to do that better. So yeah.
So what are some of the things that maybe specifically really stood out to you in this book?
I feel like I keep hammering this drum, but it's based in research. This is not just someone's opinion. This is good data for you to understand where things are at. It started with these big projects, but it culminated in this in-depth interview with dozens of real kids from real families and churches over hundreds of hours to get this content. And so it's just really invaluable that they've taken the time to do that, and we have it in this nice, neat, easy to carry portable book. It's also very well laid out, so they kind of give their premise at the beginning, and then they take a section for each of those questions, and again they take a chapter, talk about how the culture answers those questions, and then how Jesus answers those questions, but they keep coming back to these charts and graphs, and they show you, here's the questions, here's culture's answers, here's Jesus's answers, here's how we engage. And so it's like really easy for you to absorb it, grab it, port it around, and do something with it. And so that lends it to this very practical tool, because at the end of each section, they've got these scenarios. Like, if your kids have questions about this, here's maybe some thoughts and questions you can lead them through. If they have questions about this, here's some other thoughts and questions. And so they give you these really practical, like, you could open the book literally and sit down and say, hey, let's talk about these questions, and it would work. And then at the end, they've got 170 more questions that you can ask. So so it's just like an overwhelming almost, but a great wealth of information and help for you to have real conversations with your kids.
Yeah, good stuff. So are there any cautions or concerns that you would have with this book or the content?
Yeah, I've mentioned this, I think, with every one of Fuller's books we've read. A couple things that stand out to me that you just need to be aware of. One is that they are coming from a very broad cultural spectrum, across the whole United States. And so some of their examples and illustrations and even scenarios they lay out may not be familiar to you because of the demographics of who you live around and the part of the country you live in, size of town you live in. But as with anything, you got to glean the things that really apply to you, but don't throw it out because some things don't. And then the other thing is that, we have to realize that they are reporting scientific findings on cultural issues. And so because of that, they're very matter of fact and direct about some of the cultural challenges that we see, cultural scenarios we see. And so, so you're going to see them talk about gender pronouns and sexuality and, some of these other hot button issues that seem to be polarizing us, and just recognize that when they're mentioning those, it's not necessarily a condoning of that or an accepting of that. It's a reporting that this is a reality that kids are dealing with, and they want to help us help kids deal with that. So just to make sure that we're looking at it through that lens, and not hearing them incorrectly.
So what are some next steps or things that we can take away?
Parents need to realize that their kids are struggling, and that they got questions, and the content of these 3 books, I think, really help us to get a better finger on like what those things are, and really they made me feel better because it's not as like this great divide that we think. It's just, hey, recognizing that kids have questions, and when we can identify the questions and help them ask the right questions, we're going to find ourselves coming together a lot better. And so because of that, ask questions. And really ask your kids what questions are on your mind. What are some of the big questions you're struggling with? And they may not be able to initially boil down to identity and belonging and purpose. At the beginning of the book, it talks about common questions. And it's like, how do I manage my technology usage? And how do I manage my anxiety? And, those are the things they're dealing with. But underneath that is really, it comes down to those 3 questions. But we got to help them get there. So we need to ask those questions and listen. And then also get a copy of the book. And start looking through these lists and start identifying things that you think your kids are asking or struggling with, and begin looking for opportunities to have those conversations. But lastly, I think, and maybe the most important thing that any of us can do and need to be doing, is that we pray that for our young people that they would find and embrace the better answers that Jesus gives. And we can't make them do that. There's a great tool to help us understand, gives us some tools to help and guide. But ultimately, it's up to them and the Lord and their heart. And so we just need to be praying for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as we wrap up today, our 2 takeaways is first, just to check out this book, 3 Big Questions That Change Every Teenager by Carapau. And so if you I assume you can order that probably.
Yeah, you can order it lots of places.
Amazon,
we'll put a link for it for you in the notes to this episode, and you can look it up.
So check that out. And the second is to send us your thoughts and ideas for a 100th episode at connect@isthatnormal.org.
Be abnormal.